Good evening. On the road. On the road to Hebron. Heading down into the valley of, well, it's more than just Hamas. Jihad Islami. You know, every little neighborhood's got its cell, its sympathizers, its advocators, its provocateurs. You know, it's a complicated business, this world of terrorism. And if anybody doesn't think it's global, they don't want to connect the dots. Now, connecting the dots is, when it comes to global terrorism, is not an easy piece of work either. Because it's fraught with distortion and manipulation and, of course, misinformation, false information. But let's just say there's something going on, okay? Because if you look at the behavior of the various Arab countries, the Arab leaders, you know, one day they're enemies and one day they're friends. And one day they're the nice guy, one day they got blood in their eyes. So, with all that in mind, you know, I go down here at night. And someone asked me a question today. How do you do that? Aren't you afraid? Why don't you carry a gun? And I said, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years, on and off. Lately I've been doing it every night because we learn Kabbalah under the stars in the shadow of the cave of the patriarchs. It's kind of a mystically romantic place, you know? But how do I do it? Well, I don't think about it like I guess other people think about it. And I remember being a kid and doing dangerous things and thinking, well, I can't think about the danger of riding your bike too fast down a hill without brakes. Or, you know, the danger of all the kinds of things we did as kids. I don't want to get too clear about that. Some of those activities might have been beyond the statute of limitation, you know? But when you enter a place of perceived danger, you respond. Respond internally, externally. You respond with, you know, your eyes and your back and your shoulders, and everything starts getting tense, and you know the chemicals in your body start acting up, and the adrenaline starts pumping, and you start sweating, and you know, etc. But I wouldn't be driving into Hebron every night through Arab villages if I felt those things. This is not heroism. See, because there's two types of danger. There's real danger, like being a soldier in Gaza. And then there's perceived danger of being an old guy who likes to learn Torah, driving through villages at night where most of the people are sleeping. Anybody that sees me doesn't care. But then, you know, I talked to this Arab guy, and he calls me rabbi, which is interesting because most Arabs will not call you rabbi. He calls me rabbi. I think he likes me a little bit, but it doesn't mean, you know, I don't have to keep my eyes open in the back of my head. But he calls me rabbi, and he's like, you know, we don't go there. We're afraid. I said, you're afraid? What are you afraid of? You're the terrorists. These guys I usually get my car fixed by, or a hardware store, etc. And I'm kind of mystified. Why are you afraid when you are the aggressors? So he'll tell me, well, you know, the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, understand that Dalet, that D in there, defense, implies that it's not an aggressive force. Because that's also part of the game. That Israel's allowed to defend but not aggress. You know, I don't know, I ever heard in football talk the best defense is, you know, best offense is good defense. But let's not mix it up too much. Bottom line is, they're afraid of our soldiers. and our soldiers are giving their lives because of a religious position. I said the Quran holds that it will dominate the world, and that all the infidels need to be either brought to Islam or done away with. Now, this is a international genocidal concept. It's not genocidal against just Jews. Ultimately, it's genocidal against anything that's not Islam, which you don't have to have a PhD in psychology or to find that is insane. Yet it seems the problem with the world is not the definition of insanity. The problem is, what do you do about it? So part of what we believe in the Kabbalah and in the people that delve into the deep mysteries of the Torah, we look at the Zohar. You know what the Zohar says? Exactly what the Arabs say, what the Muslims say, that there will be 9 months. 9 months, it says, very clearly. You know, not 9 ancient months or biblical months, 9 30-day months. That Islam, the sons of Yishmael, will rule, Kivyochol, de facto, will rule the world. So everybody hears that and they get a little nervous. 9 months, really? They're going to rule the world? How does that look? How does that look for, 1.5 billion or so Muslims to rule the rest of the world? How do you define ruling the world in a world of 8 billion people where half the 8 billion don't even listen to you or can listen to you? How do you define ruling the world? Maybe it's ruling the shipping lanes down by Yemen. Or maybe it's ruling the Suez Canal. Maybe it's ruling the entrance to the Mediterranean. Or the entrance to the Black Sea or the Dardanelles. Where does it begin? Where does the definition end? How do you fulfill this prophecy in your mind? How do you understand it? Because the Jewish people do not believe in Muslim prophecies per se, but when that same prophecy from the Muslim book appears in the Jewish book, then we have to listen. We have to listen. And so the challenge here is, okay, what do we do about it? Well, if you're a world leader, it's a little different than if you're an average guy trying to, build a family, stay alive, pay your bills, enjoy life a little bit. But whoever you are, whatever role of influence or status or titles you have, what can you really do about 1.5 billion Muslims that believe from their book that they're going to rule the world? Now the Zohar, the Holy Zohar of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, comes along and says, yes, but only 9 months. So how much damage can be done in 9 months? But let's not talk about damage, because that's even more esoteric and difficult. The idea of ruling, could it mean changing world oil off the dollar? Is that ruling the world? The Muslims don't have one currency globally. But if there was one currency, my friends, if there was one currency and all the world's oil was traded on that currency, you can bet your bottom real or dira or lira or drachma, whatever, that there's going to be a lot of hands in the powers of the sheikhs and the caliphates the Hamulas of Hebron. See, because this is something that we've seen in Africa over and over. There is no unified currency in Africa, and therefore Africa cannot unite amongst itself to create a potential world economic power. Because let's face it, the war is not about spilling blood of young men anymore. That doesn't win a war. You see it now. You see it in Ukraine. Spilling blood is only designed to get people to give in or to change or to accept conditions. The shift of power. What power? Economic power. Social power. And of course, spiritual power, or what we might call religion. Spiritual power and religious power are two different things too. Now, so I'm talking to this Arab guy, this Muslim. He looks at me, oh Rabbi, you can tell I think about things a little, off the beaten path. And I say, well, what do you want? Do you want a two-state solution here in Israel? No. They just steal from us. What do you want? Oh, Israel good, Israel good. And I've heard it a dozen times. Why don't we ever hear those reports at CNN? Why doesn't the Prime Minister mention that interesting fact? Why isn't there a public debate about it? Why are the Arabs asked? Why isn't their opinion considered? Why isn't there a referendum to give people a chance to vote on what these Arabs want? We're fighting for them. They're fighting for themselves. They're fighting for their sons and daughters are dying. Why doesn't the vote come down to the very people that they claim they're fighting for? Because they're not fighting for them. Ask anybody that's come out of Gaza. The UNWRA is a... I don't know who works for who. The UN works for Hamas or Hamas works for the UN. But they got it down pretty good together. That's also been documented and reported recently in Israeli news. I don't know if you get that news. And a lot of it's translated or with subtitles. So there's no excuses except the control of the media itself. Laila Tov, Manishma, Kol Tuv. So we're entering Kiryat Arba now, which is a Jewish settlement. It's a town. Settlement kind of sounds like tents and coolers. Propane burners, No, it's a town. And we should be proud of the people that live here. They're not terrorists. They're not right-wing terrorists. They're not religious terrorists. Why can't you can't even be right-wing in Israel anymore. You're either radical right or nothing. Moderate. And you see, so it's all a word game, my friends. And people are dying for the word game. And the word game is just played as a deflection from the economic game, the real game. And God forbid, the 9 months happens soon. I don't know when Ishmael's going to get his time on the throne. But we can have a good idea of what it's going to look like from what we've seen so far. Now, the rest of the prophecy that we've seen passed down through our tradition is that eventually, there will be a unification between Ishmael and Esav. Remember, Esav was the nephew of Ishmael. He was his uncle. Everybody has an older, rich uncle, right? A friendly uncle. A guy who helps out in need. So Esav went to Ishmael for help, and he got 2 wives in the deal. Okay. It's getting late. I'm getting close to the Ma'ara. We got people to see and books to read and prayers to pray. And I want to bless you all. Find that place of openness and understanding. Religion is one thing, but tradition is another. Let's open our eyes. How many times do the prophets get it right? What's their batting average? It's a lot higher than the guy who won the title this year, I'm sure. And it's not about manipulation. It's about God's compassion expressed through a few individuals to give us a light at the end of the dark road. And folks, we've entered that dark road, and we need light. We've got it, and we're here to share it. God loves you all. Have a great weekend. Shabbat Shalom.